Ahmaud Arbery's accused killers are set to appear before a judge Friday in South Georgia. Father and son Gregory and Travis McMichael are expected to enter pleas via video from jail to felony murder and other charges stemming from the deadly February 23rd encounter. William Roddie Bryan will also be arraigned remotely from the Glenn County Detention Center, while his lawyer tries to convince the judge to set him free pending his trial.
Our position is he's committed no crime. He was a patriotic American citizen doing what anybody would have done that day.
After filming the fatal confrontation, Bryan was later charged with the same crimes as the McMichaels.
They've taken their mockingbird and turned him into a canary.
Bryan's lawyer, Gough, says his client should be treated as a witness and not a defendant. Bryan has been held without bail since his arrest on May 22nd.
His situation is that his life has been destroyed. He's presumed innocent, but, I mean, he's lost his house, he's lost his car, he's lost his job.
Gough cites the case of an Atlanta police officer who was granted bond in the death of civilian Rayshard Brooks. He argues that Bryan deserves bond because he stands accused of a, quote, far less serious offense than Officer Devin Brosnan.
The question that we have, and we haven't gotten an answer from the state at this point, is why does Roddie Bryan remain in jail when he was unarmed? Well, other than blue privilege, why is it that the police officers have been treated so generously while my client languishes in a jail?
Bryan also wants the Cobb County District Attorney removed from the case. He claims the Georgia Attorney General appointed Joyette Holmes to the case in violation of state law. He wants Atlantic Judicial Circuit District Attorney Tom Durden back on the case.
We don't believe that she has been authorized. We don't believe she was authorized to give advice about the arrest warrants issued in this case. We don't believe she was authorized to participate in the preliminary hearing in this case. We don't believe she was authorized to present this case to the grand jury. That's not a knock on Joyette Holmes. It's not a knock on Tom Durden. It's not a knock on the Attorney General. But if the procedures haven't been followed, then they need to be fixed.
Finally, another motion seeks to bring an end to statements made by Arbery's family lawyer, Lee Merritt.
This is a case that seems to have an unending stream of leaks from various sources, and we're trying to address that. All I can tell you is that we're in discussion with the District Attorney's Office. We're in discussion with the legal counsel for the various media outlets, trying to come up with a resolution that protects everybody's rights.
Vinny, tomorrow the hearing is expected to be well attended with several subpoenas out for witnesses. Plus, we're expecting some peaceful protests outside of the courthouse like we witnessed for the preliminary hearing back in June. And this hearing tomorrow, Vinny, could last a couple of hours or it could last several hours. We'll just have to wait and see.
Logistically, what's going to be the setup tomorrow? Do we know? We understand, as you reported, that the defendants are going to remain in the jail. So who's in court? Who's not in court? How's that going to work?
Well, what we're being told is if we want a seat inside the courtroom along with the judge and the attorneys because of social distancing and the requirement to wear a mask, we have to arrive early and stand in line. If the public or spectators or family members don't make it inside the actual courtroom, there is an overflow courtroom nearby where the spectators can watch the video of the hearing. So they're taking all precautions under the COVID-19 conditions to make sure everyone is safe and able to still attend and watch the hearing.
All right, Chanley Painter getting ready for a huge day tomorrow down there in Glenn County. Chanley, thank you. Also joining us tonight from outside the jail, where his client is Kevin Gough, the attorney for William Roddie Bryan, the man who recorded the video. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here, sir.
Well, let me I got to clarify. Every time you talk about the charges against your client, you say he's charged with less. Isn't he facing murder charges?
Well, it doesn't matter how many counts you put in the indictment. It doesn't matter how you characterize the offense. You still have the problem that he doesn't have any criminal intent. Whether you call it aiding and abetting, part of the crime, conspiracy, under any theory to any offense, he still has to have criminal intent. And that is completely absent in this case. So they can come back with 2,000 or 3,000 counts against him, but it's the same case that they had when they started, which is no case.
And I understand your arguments, and I know you're going to passionately argue them, but he's a murder defendant, and murder defendants, for the most part, don't usually get released before trial, do they?
Even in Georgia, murder defendants do get released on bond. We have two murder defendants, one murder defendant and one putative murder defendant, if I understand the media reports correctly, in a shooting in Atlanta. They both got bond. A gentleman accused of an aggravated assault, as I understand it, during which the alleged victim died. That's felony murder under the same theory that's being pursued here. Our position is that justice shouldn't depend on what county you're in, which prosecutor you have, and it certainly shouldn't depend on blue privilege as to whether you have a badge or not. The law shouldn't be a respecter of persons, and our client is entitled to a bond.
All right, Kevin, another thing that you've said a couple times that I've heard, and you told Chanley today, is that William Roddie Bryan was doing what any patriotic American would be doing. Can you expound on that just a little bit more? What do you mean? What was the patriotic act that he was undertaking that day?
Well, just as Joyette Holmes is avoiding going into the evidence in the case, I'm going to do the same. I think most of that evidence is out there at this point, and what isn't out there probably will be tomorrow by the end of the day, but we're not going to do that tonight. But I've said from the start that he has acted as any patriotic American would under the same circumstances, whether they were black or white or Martian, and regardless of whether Mr. Arbery was black or white or Martian. This case has nothing to do with race. It never did, and Mr. Bryan has committed no crime. And we believe that the truth will start to come out tomorrow.
Let me ask you this. I've never heard from you or from your client the reason why he was recording what was happening that day. And I don't know if you're going to tell me tonight. My guess is you probably won't. But if you can tell me, tell me.
You would be correct.
If you can't tell me, okay. So, but when you do answer that question, right, and explain to whether it's a jury or a judge why he was recording that day, will that explanation make it clear from your perspective why you believe he's innocent?
Well, as we've said before from the start, Mr. Bryan is a witness to the shooting. And you can tell that because he's approximately 100 feet away, unarmed, with a cell phone. Clearly, he is not a participant in this shooting. He is a witness. But for the videotape that he made, there would be no case in this situation, and the Arbery family would probably never have gotten their day in court.
You know, there's some videos that have not been released. I don't know what you've seen, what you haven't seen yet. But when all the videos are released, is that a good thing for Roddie Bryan, or is that a bad thing for Roddie Bryan?
We're confident that when all that evidence is presented to a jury, or whenever it gets out there, that it will show that Roddie Bryan committed no crime, that he is innocent. And we will see tomorrow. There is a notice to produce pending with the District Attorney's Office, with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and we have requested that all the physical evidence be produced at every hearing in this case, including tomorrow's. So if we have our way, we will be presenting those videos in evidence in this case.
Let me ask you this. Will there be witnesses tomorrow? Who have you subpoenaed? Who do you want to get up on the witness stand tomorrow?
Well, you know, trial and hearings is a little bit of, it's a kind of event where usually the state and the defense don't like to show their hands in advance. They have a list of witnesses and exhibits. We have a list of witnesses and exhibits. They will present some of theirs. We will present some of ours. But I don't want to say too much at this point about what we will present. I can tell you that we have the Deputy Assistant Attorney General who was responsible for the appointment process in this case. He will be available tomorrow and testifying. We have District Attorney Tom Durden, who's been subpoenaed. He will be there pursuant to subpoena. We had a long and productive conversation about his testimony this afternoon. and we will see how the case progresses, but we would anticipate him having come all the way from Hinesville down here for court, that we would get him up and get his testimony tomorrow.
You know, after watching the preliminary hearing last time everyone was down at the courthouse and listening to the testimony from the prosecution, it's my understanding that Roddie Bryan was part of the pursuit and was behind and was chasing down and sort of trapping Ahmaud Arbery from getting out of the neighborhood. Isn't that why he's being prosecuted?
First of all, that's not why he's being prosecuted. I think the reasons why he's being prosecuted will become clear, but they have nothing to do with his role in the participation, any participation in the events of that day. And I think everyone will agree when the truth comes out and the evidence is out there that he didn't do anything wrong, and that he is wrongfully charged.
What's the biggest misperception in the public right now about your client?
Well, I think the biggest misperception out there is that there's a quote-unquote lynch mob or quote-unquote posse running around Satilla Shores looking to attack black people. That's never happened. There's no evidence of that. And really, if you subtract Roddie Bryan from this case, what do you have left? You have a father and a son. Doesn't sound very scary to me. Mr. Bryan's role in this case is to portray and perpetrate. That would be our position now. I don't know what's in anybody else's mind, but it certainly looks like Mr. Bryan is being used as a pawn here to promote this false narrative.
Do you think you're going to get a fair shake from the judge?
If I keep reaching my face. The bugs here are going wild down here in South Georgia tonight.
I can imagine. Do you think you'll get a fair shake from the judge?
I have a lot of confidence in Judge Walmsley. I've been before him before. I think he is a very fair and very learned scholar. He's in maybe the biggest case of his judicial career. And, you know, when you find out the true character and true mettle of people, when you see how they respond to pressure. But we believe that we will get a fair hearing, and we believe that he's the right judge for this case at this point, based on what we know.
Let me ask you, and you want the prosecutor tossed from the case, and I'm trying to figure out, why does it matter who's prosecuting the case against Roddie Bryan? I mean, the facts are the facts, right?
Well, the facts are the facts. And let's be clear, this case is going to go forward whether Joyette Holmes prosecutes the case out of Cobb County, or whether Tom Dern prosecutes a case out of Liberty County, or some other district attorney is appointed in this case. This case will go forward in any event, but we are entitled, and I think the public has a right to know how these things take place. In Georgia, district attorneys are constitutional officers. They are not employees of the Attorney General. They are not employees of the governor. The public has a right to know who's prosecuting a case, and if a change is going to be made, the public, including Mr. Bryan, has the right to know that it's been done in accordance with the law, and that was not done in this case.
Kevin Gough, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thanks for taking the time. I know your client is waiting to see you tonight, and you have a big day tomorrow. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.